Hello, Internet. My name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I want to talk to you about two more Netflix original shows that I watched recently, and they are bad. They're just bad. Um, so the first is called Levius, and it's literally just Megalobox, but worse. Like, you know how Megalobox was like a really thrilling story of the triumph of the human soul and, you know, like masterfully animated? Well, Levius is a really shitty generic story about corporate greed and weird kidnappings and magic blood water and um, punching people with robot arms. Uh, there doesn't seem to be any deeper message. Uh, there's a whole lot of time spent on backstory and how the weird magic blood water works and everything. But I think really they just wanted an excuse to have steampunk and Megalobox in the same thing. So yeah, they give everyone steampunk arms so they can be, metal boxers. Uh, it's actually kind of ridiculous. At one point in the show, they mentioned that there's like 1,500 different metal boxers in the world. And at first glance, you might think that's a reasonable number, but that's like that's like 10% of the number of regular boxers in the world. It's kind of stupid. Um, so that's weird. It's always interesting to me when someone writes fiction and they say like, "Oh, there's thousands," and they think it's a big number, but then you look at the real world comparison and it's like, that's not enough. What are you talking about? Like how in Harry Potter there's like 32 people in Harry's first year class, and that's like nowhere near enough to be like the only school in an entire country. I mean, you know, even if less than 1% of people were wizards, there should still be more than that. But, you know, world building is hard when you're a hack and, a terrible person. Um, so yeah, Levius basically takes that approach, and it's 100% in shitty 3D animation. Um, the kind of 3D animation where you can tell they put almost no effort into it, and some of the models look really terrible. Like, one of the main side characters is this, like, young blonde boxer lady who thinks she's all that but really isn't, and she has a huge crush on the titular character of Levius, and every time she's on screen I just think, is that the best they could do with her model? Because they clearly wanted her to be like, small and perky, like a girl, but like on the thin side, with like maybe A cups or something. And from some angles you can tell that's what they're trying to do. But when you look at her from the front, her chest like slopes into itself in a weird way, and it just creates this visual effect where it's just like, that's not how human beings look. What the fuck did you guys do? How did you mess up her model that much? And, you know, that shouldn't be happening. Um, so yeah, that it's pretty low quality overall. Um, the entire plot basically revolves around Levius having to rescue this girl he wasn't able to rescue in the past, and that's about it. um, like it kind of hints that it might be trying to be like, his rise to the top of boxing or whatever, but they don't really do anything with that. Like he never states that it's his goal to hit the top or anything. Uh, um, so it's weird, and I don't know. The season basically ends right after he rescues the girl, so I think it could reasonably just be done there. But I also think that maybe they intended for it to go a lot further because they spent a lot of time on world building that isn't really used in any meaningful way. So most likely they were intending to get a second season where they get to see some of that come to fruition. But eh, eh, you know, the villain is also very generic. He's just that guy from anime who's all obsessed with like the pain of sacrifice and whatever, and he has like the eccentric rich guy who gets off on watching other people struggle, like you know it's just that, just exactly that, just voyeuristic Hisoka all over the place, you know. um it's ridiculous. So that's my opinion of Levius. It's a Netflix original and it sucks. Another Netflix original I wanted to talk about is, it's called Cannon Busters, and oh boy. So I think this show is trying to ape Trigun, but it's hard to tell because they do such a bad job of it. Um, the main character looks like he got thrown out of a Spike Spiegel lookalike contest for being too shit, and he acts like just the worst, like in every possible way. Like, you know how a lot of times in movies there will be an outlaw character who's, rough and tumble, and they do bad things sometimes, but they've got a heart of gold, and you know, he's not like that. He's just a dumb douche. He's constantly angry for no reason. He constantly makes the stupidest possible decision, picks fights he doesn't need to fight. I I don't know what his goals are at all. Like 6 episodes into the series, he gets into a fight with a random villain who is like, reads his mind and is like, "Oh, this is your tragic backstory, isn't it?" And I'm like, "Okay, that's the worst way you could possibly exposition dump his tragic backstory." And why'd you wait till you were halfway through the season, you dumb motherfuckers? Um, but apparently, his family was murdered by some soldiers who work for this one government, and so he wants to kill the royal family of that government. And that's it. Now, this is somewhat complicated by the fact that his traveling companions work for that government and are trying to get to a member of the royal family to protect them. So, But that's not set up at the beginning, right? We don't have that dramatic irony to build throughout the series. We just, get it dumped on us halfway through, and honestly don't give a shit because, one, it came in late, and two, he doesn't really seem to act on it at all. So, whatever. Um, it's ridiculous, honestly. And I mean, this one isn't shittily animated, but it does have all of the bad tropes you expect. Like, first of all, as I mentioned, they replace, they keep the basic group dynamic from Trigun, where you've got the character who's supposed to be a badass but is kind of a loser, and you've got their two traveling companions who lighten up the mood and are interesting in some way, except they're not interesting. Right? Like, one of them is the cute robot girl who's been created to be friendly but doesn't understand human emotions, and hilarity ensues. Ugh. And the other one is literally the exact same goddamn thing, except she's built to fix machines instead of people. And it's just. Ugh. Like, they contribute nothing to group dynamics. There is no group dynamic because none of the characters have any rapport with each other. So it's not like it's not like in Trigun where the two girls who were chasing after him could, talk to each other and talk to him and talk to the other villagers and do interesting things. No, they were just ugh. So, yeah. Um, there are some other characters who aren't really worth talking about. Like, they introduce a character whose name is Nine, and he's just, that guy who gets drunk and thus becomes good at martial arts. Ha ha ha. Except he uses a sword because he's a samurai who abandoned his pack of Ronin, which doesn't make any sense because Ronin are samurai without a pack, but whatever. It's so dumb. And there's a lot of time spent on world building. In fact, the first 3 episodes each have like a 5-minute long flashback to establish elements of the world for no reason. Like, that's what episode 1 is for, you dipshits. Don't drag that out across 3 episodes. And then introduce more flashbacks 3 episodes later when we thought we were done with that. Ugh. Anyway. But basically, the setup is there's this one country with a king in charge of it who is like really powerful. Supposedly eradicated all the magic at some point in the past, and is in charge of an alliance of 5 nations and is very technologically advanced. And I say supposedly eliminated the magic because there's still a lot of magic around. Our main character is immortal, so, that has to be worked into every single episode. Every single episode has to show him dying at least once so that we can... I don't know why. Like, it has no shock value to the viewer, and it's not, it's not like he needs to die in order for interesting things to happen, But, god damn it, we wrote an immortal character, so god damn it, we're going to kill him over and over again. We don't care if there's no emotional impact. It's really stupid. I mean, you could have just as easily written a character who actually was a badass and given them plot armor. Same effect, Yeah. And the series ends in a really weird way. they want to set up a sequel season. So season 1 is all about our original trio and whoever they happen to pick up along the way going to rescue the prince. I should have finished talking about the backstory. So anyway, this kingdom that destroyed all the magic and is big and powerful, well, they get the shit kicked out of them, and the prince has to flee to a secondary fortress that they think will be more safe. And in the process, he gets separated from his personal friend Drone, who is also a super weapon, and she's the one who ends up finding our main character, Philly the Kid. Yeah, his name is so stupid, I almost forgot it. And they travel together to rescue the prince. And the people who kick the shit out of the kingdom, apparently the king had a son before, and that son went on to become super magical and maybe make a dark deal with a demon. Not quite sure. And so he wants to kill everyone, including the prince. Cool, whatever. So the story mostly revolves around Philly and friends chasing after the prince. And every episode is more or less a self-contained story of them bumbling into a terrible situation and then bumbling right back out of it. You know, Trigun style. And the setting and the environment feels very much like Trigun too, because it's like simultaneously trying to get an old westish vibe, but also everything is high tech. Like the guns shoot blue lasers, but still use bullets and revolving chambers? Question marks? Like, they have cars and cars that can turn into mechas, but they ride mechanical horses, like not motorcycles, but just actual horses that are robots. Why? Ugh. It's pretty ridiculous. So yeah. So anyway, the season basically ends with both the bad guys and the good guys converging on the location of the prince all at once. And there's a bunch of big battles that happen all at the same time. And our main character, who apparently has a vendetta against this kingdom, but it doesn't really come up. But he pretends like he's going to shoot the prince for a little bit. But every time he has a chance, he lines up the shot for like 2 minutes and then doesn't take it. So, whatever. And then at the end, even though they beat up all the bad guys, mostly, the prince gets dragged away. And they just kind of stand there and let it happen. And then and then they wait until dawn to go after him, and they like talk about how their plan is to go after him, so it's like setting up for a sequel. And I'm just like, that's so dumb. Like, they got away. You let them get away. You're not gonna catch up. That it's so dumb. So yeah. The animation's not bad, but otherwise it's pretty shit. I suppose while I'm here, I should also mention the Baki anime has part 3 out now, which covers the Rai Tai tournament and the matchup with Muhammad Ali Jr. And man, like, I already read the manga, but man, is it good to see that in animation. And it's fully dubbed too. And it's just like so good. Like, it's so good. Um, and it flows really well. Almost all of the animation is great. None of it is in 3D this time. In the first two parts, they had some random shots that were in 3D for no apparent reason, but in this one, I didn't notice that at all. So that's cool. I don't know what actual studio is doing it, but it's branded as a Netflix original, and it's only on Netflix, so I figure it goes in this pile. Um, yeah, part three covers some really interesting stuff. There's a lot of really cool stuff, but really most of the best parts of the story happen after this. So I really hope that people keep watching Baki so that they keep making it, because I want to see them animate the stuff that happens in the next part of Baki's story, because it's insane. um, like, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who isn't up to date on the manga, but like, part three ends with them talking about, uh, you know, Baki and Yujiro finally setting up a match, but that doesn't happen right away. In fact, there's like three or four other really important things that happen before that, and they take a while. Um, Baki does a lot more training. He fights some other really powerful opponents who I won't spoil, but they're really interesting. Um, one of them has already been introduced into the story, and some of the others have not. um, and then he does eventually get a confrontation with Yujiro, but I won't tell you how that goes. um, but the story does go on after that confrontation, and it's kind of weird and interesting. So I really hope to see all of that animated. There were a couple places where I thought the translation wasn't quite as good as it could have been, but not like horrible, you know. Um, there was nothing that was like wrong. There were just moments where it could have been slightly more dramatic, but whatever. I understand they need to trim some things for the animation process to work. But yeah, it looks beautiful. I really like it, and hopefully Baki gets even more love now that it's fully drawn. Well, it's not hand drawn, I don't think, but it's, traditional animation style, and it flows beautifully. It works really well. Looks really good. Um, so hopefully it'll get some more view, and we can get the rest of the parts. I would actually love to see them go back and do some of the early parts of Baki's story, because part one of Baki on Netflix picks up after the tournament, the first tournament that he wins. So there's a ton of the Baki story that's left unanimated uh, by this team anyway. There is an anime, well, two anime series that cover all of this stuff prior to this, but they're from like, I want to say the early 90s, and they don't look as good as this new stuff. So, I mean, they don't look terrible, but realistically, like, the way they're being redrawn doesn't quite show off the artistic style of the original author. And the original author has an insane artistic style that, like, really highlights the human musculature in a way that's just like boggling to look at. And that comes through very well in Baki Part 3, but it doesn't really come through as much in like the original run of Baki the Grappler, you know. Um, but I mean, it's still worthwhile. And if you haven't watched Baki or read it, then I highly recommend the animated versions. They're good enough. Um, you know, I tend to prefer anime to manga just because, you know, it's got light and color and sound and movement. So it's a lot of advantages in the storytelling, especially when it comes to action focused stories. Um, and the narration actually works really, really well in these stories too. So I think it works. But yeah, basically that's the video. I just want to talk about a couple of Netflix originals. I think Netflix's like strategy of copycatting popular shows isn't really working for them. Like they always try to put a twist on it, but the twist they seem to be putting on it is, what if we took this already functional show and gave it a bunch of overcomplicated nonsense that no one cares about and unoriginal characters? And that just doesn't work. You know, like Killer Bee or I think it's supposed to be 13, but whatever. That story like starts off like it's going to be just Death Note, and then they start introducing that he's a magic crow person from, you know, aliens. Like, you know, if they want to be successful, they need to not rely on bad gimmicks. They need to get teams together who want to tell a story that they care about and then let them do it. You know, like Kengan Ashura may have some pacing issues and may be entirely in the gross CG, but it's got potential. You know, it's got some storytelling to it, some interest to the characters. There's some hype behind some of the fight scenes, and you know, it does typically feel like discount Baki, but like it feels like the people who made it really loved Baki so much they just couldn't stop themselves from making a discount Baki. And I'm kind of excited to see what happens in season 3 if it ever gets a season 3. So yeah, you know, to me, good storytelling always comes from a place of genuine desire to tell a good story. And Netflix has a desire to create content that they can monetize. And, you know, the anime market is increasingly big. And, you know, but Netflix is still really bad at appealing to the anime market. Like, for example, they have One Piece on there now, which I highly recommend you watch if you haven't, but they only have up until the end of the Alabasta arc. And gross. I mean, it's the Funimation dub, so at least it's not, you know, the ruined version. But I mean, while everything in One Piece is good, it only gets better as it goes for quite a while, so stopping after Alabasta is cutting you off from some of the best parts of the story. Like just objectively, Skypiea is better, Water 7 is better, you know. The last war at Marineford is insane, you know, like there's a lot of really great shit that happens after that and is animated, but they don't have it. You know, Netflix is really bad about getting very small chunks of very big anime. I have no idea why. Like, what is the point of getting Naruto if you're only going to have a few seasons of it? It's a continuing story. We want to see what happens next. you know. And the vast majority of shows that are on Netflix that are like Netflix originals are shows that, they have 1 or 2 seasons, both of which, end on cliffhangers, but shouldn't have even gotten 1 season in the first place. There's not those shows that were like so good and you can't understand why they were canceled, and it's they're the shows where it's like, who asked for this? Who thought this was okay to produce? Like, I mean, there's some things here that might be interesting, but not enough. It's not all bad. I mean, there's some good ones. The Seven Seeds Project is stupid on every level, but it has some like kind of compelling character drama, and I kind of want to see that couple hook up so that they can end the show properly. um, or everyone dies, either way. But honestly, that's the only reason I would watch it. Like, there are some interesting character moments, but everything about the setup of the story is bad. So, and it's not really paced very well. But yeah, I think Netflix has a lot of work to do on their original anime. I think, they should take pages more from, like, not copying shows that are popular right now or that have been popular in the past, but just like looking at what people love about a show, right? Like, the reason people liked Trigun wasn't because it was about, an outlaw and shooting and quirky sidekicks. The reason people loved Trigun is because all of the characters were interesting and you wanted to learn more about them and what they're doing and why, and the world they're in has a bunch of secrets that you don't know until you get to the end, right? And so it's compelling. There is more to Vash the Stampede than just the fact that he is an outlaw and a loser. It's the fact that he's only pretending to be a loser. And the fact that, he has this dark past and this goal he's trying to reach, and these, this friendly persona, even though he can't really get close to people. And, there's depth and layers and stuff to do with the character. It's not just, oh, this guy is got a big bounty and no one's ever going to be able to catch him. Watch the drama ensue, and I think they realized that premise wasn't enough to carry a show, so they added a second premise of it's also a rescue story, but we don't actually care about rescuing the character, so we're just going to take 2 seasons to do it. Yeah. So, basically, my point is, if you're going to ape Trigun, don't ape the setting and the broad strokes of the ideas. Ape the fact that you have deep, interesting characters. You can put those characters into any setting, right? Like, the characters from Trigun would be just as compelling if you dropped them into the modern day or 12th century BC. Like anywhere you put these characters, they would be interesting characters and an interesting story would ensue, right? So the setting doesn't matter. The premise doesn't matter. It's what you put into that premise, what you put into that setting that matters. It's the characters and how they interact with the setting. That's what makes the story. And, you know, I think a lot of people fail to realize that when you write for world building and not character, you write shitty characters that nobody wants to watch. So yeah, that. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below how you felt about these shows. If there are any other Netflix originals you want me to check out and talk about. Yeah. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Okay, end card time. I'm supposed to tell you to like, comment, subscribe, all that stupid YouTube shit. There's a bell thingy, whatever. I have all the social media stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. Mostly I use Facebook and Twitter to tell you about my Twitch and YouTube uploads. I've got a Patreon, but Patreon is one of those things where people who can afford to throw away money give money to people who can't. And so if you can't afford to throw away money, then you shouldn't be doing that. And if you can afford to throw away money, consider charities. There's a pandemic, there's global warming, there's millions of people in the world who don't have toilets, which is just awful. So I've linked a few charities in the description down below in case you're interested in that. And if you can't donate money to a charity, consider donating some of your time, because that's also very useful. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.